Assalamu alaikum, good morning to everyone. Khaja Khawar Saab. Just as means of a quick introduction about myself, I joined Punjab Board of Investments about 4 months ago. Before this, I was with the Islamic Development Bank in Jeddah. I was part of their private equity team looking at Asia and Central Asia. I was there for about 6 years. Before that, I was in Malaysia, and earlier in Singapore, and before that in the US. So, I've come back home after about 11 years. So that's just a quick introduction about myself. Khaja Khawar Saab rightly mentioned, and he was very generous. He didn't mention enough issues. He mentioned some of the issues, special economic zones. They need to have the right policies. They need to have an investor-driven, private sector-driven attitude, better coordination with government departments, etc. I have to start with acknowledging that there are issues. Right? So, I'm not going to sit here and play stupid and tell you that how wonderful everything is. So, of course, things are not as wonderful as they should be. The private sector needs to play a more active role. The government needs to be more supportive, etc. Of course, all of that needs to happen. So this must be acknowledged, put on the table up front. In the last 4 months that I've been interacting with and getting to know the business community in Punjab and in Pakistan also in a broader sense. One of the things that happens whenever I meet a group of business community members is that the first 15 or 20 minutes of that conversation is generally a finger-pointing blame game on how horrible PBIT has been or the issues that have not been solved. So that's why, that challenge is there, and that's why they need to sit together and solve those challenges as much as we can, right? So we don't live in a perfect world. Issues would remain, but you're all business people. They need to have continuous improvement. They need to continuously improve our policies, processes, procedures need to be there. And that means that they need to have sessions like these, smaller sessions, more focused sessions, or larger sessions. To have the right conversations going is important. Right? So just to lay in terms of laying the context, I want to, just put it out there that let's not think of it as an us versus them, or you versus us kind of conversation. We're all here collectively trying to work towards both individual welfare and collective welfare as a province in this country. So I am very much, I want to assure you that PBIT wants to both learn from you, get your input, because it's you who's driving the private sector, right? It's not a bunch of professionals in PBIT who are going to change things in Punjab. It's the business community that's going to lead this. So that I just want to put out there right in the outset. Rashid has commented a little bit about our strategy. I think I just want to take a few minutes to talk a little bit about the strategy of Punjab Board of Investment and Trade and how we are trying to steer PBIT towards being or towards becoming a more proactive organization that works in sync with the local business community. And part of that, a main part of that strategy is to actually realize what is PBIT's true place in the larger, broader ecosystem of everything that is related to business. Right? And that ecosystem includes business community, it includes financial institutions, it includes government, it includes regulatory bodies. So it's a whole full-fledged ecosystem that includes everything. And PBIT, the role that I envision for PBIT is to see how do I start becoming a key part of that ecosystem and start making those connections between these and playing my role within this ecosystem to make sure that we work towards promoting investments and getting the investment to GDP ratio up, the figure that Khaja also referred to at the beginning, which is true, that we are a heavily consumption-driven economy and the investment to GDP ratio has been very low. Now, so in terms of strategy, therefore, in my view, there are three there are three key aspects of where we want to take PBIT. The first aspect, which is sort of very obvious, is facilitation. Now, facilitation, in its role as a facilitator, my role is, in one sense, fairly broad. And that role essentially is to help businesses with anything and everything vis-a-vis the government that these businesses face, right? So whether it is licensing, whether it is getting NOCs, whether it is, there's all sorts of issues, all sorts of legitimate issues that businesses face with regards to government or government departments. The whole purpose of PBIT, one key purpose of that strategy is to act as a facilitator to smoothen those things out. Right? Now, this relates to both large businesses and smaller businesses. So SMEs, smaller businesses, startups, and also large established businesses. Of course, all of them have their issues vary, and the nature of issues and the nature of their problems with regards to governments vary. Now, therefore, what we have started out as is right now the facilitation process that we are setting up in PBIT. We have 2-3 clear wings. So we have a startup wing that we established. This is a wing that focuses exclusively on new businesses, and I'll come to this also around the end of my little talk about the significance of where we can also, as a business community, link into the startup world. But so there is a specialized desk now for startups. One example that Rashid mentioned is Pakstraw, Pakistani company, young entrepreneur from UAT has come up with a straw very similar to Life Straw, which as you drink water, it purifies water. The international cost of this is $35. This smart person has been able to bring that down to $3. Was getting an issue getting certifications. We got him the certification. Now he can officially manufacture in Pakistan. Because that happened, one of the large international private equity funds is putting in $1 million into him. All of a sudden, he's a $10 million valuation company. Right? To me, that's a great success story because that's a local business that we got going. And inshallah, many more will come. Now, the way we started out with this was we started visiting entrepreneurship centers. So we identified this person from Lum's Entrepreneurship Center, and we started reaching out to others. And we've started out in a fairly unstructured way, right? So the idea is, I don't know how much clout does Pivot have with regards to various departments of the government, right? And to measure and to get a realistic sense of what can we practically, realistically do, we've started out in a very unstructured way by saying, let's take every case that comes to us on a case-by-case basis, and let's go and get it done. So right now, the facilitation desk in PBIT is functioning more as a SWAT team, that's getting cases and saying, what can I realistically achieve? Right? Because it's very important to be realistic, very important to be practical. I don't want it to be just rosy, good speeches and good words and just applause. So in order to fully measure what can we realistically do, we've started out right now in a fairly unstructured way by saying, let's take every case that comes to us and let's see what we can achieve. So on the startup front, this happened. With regards to a slightly larger project, it's a $100 million hospital project that we're looking at by a Pakistani-American doctor. It was a case of commercialization of land. It takes a lot of time. We managed to get that through. So this is a success that we were able to achieve early on at a larger ticket size, for a larger size project. The person has already made an investment of about $7 billion. Needed to get that going. So that's one achievement that we're able to do at a larger ticket size. So I just gave these two examples just to illustrate that at various ends of the spectrum, so from startups to SMEs to larger ticket sizes, there is this idea of let me do a lot of cases, and as I build more and more success stories, hopefully I'll be able to structure the facilitation program into a very structured program where once the investor walks into PBIT, I can offer the investor sort of an a la carte menu, say, look, what do you want, right? This is what we can practically achieve. And the investor can say, look, I want facilitation with X, Y, Z, this. And we actually go and achieve that because then we will practically know what we can do. And then by that time, inshallah, we would also want to sort of structure it in the way that, each complaint that comes to us, a ticket gets generated, you get informed, I mean, there's sort of a timeline that gets determined. So things happen in a more consumer sort of friendly way where there's more information there. So that's the facilitation side. The second piece of it, strategy for PBIT, is my marketing function. We have stolen a marketing director from LCCI, Fatma is here. I'm trying to beef up my marketing team, and the role, my emphasis in marketing is to be able to tell the right kinds of stories, right? And this is a conversation I have all the time with a lot of friends. The conversation that, look, we have issues that are both real, but then we also have perception issues. So we have real issues. It would be silly to say that this is all perception issues. That's not true. So we have real issues that we need to address, but then we have perception issues. And my role as PBIT is, yes, we have to fight the fight for real issues, whatever our mandate is, but then we also have a big responsibility to fight the fight on perceptions, right? On making sure that we're able to capture the right stories, right? So for that, my focus, as in terms of building out my marketing department, is to be able to tell the right kind of stories, which are stories like the two stories that I just told you, which are stories of success of local businesses. Right? Now, because when I meet various business people, and I do look at amazing success stories, it just I just am I've come back home after about 11 years. It surprises me why don't more people know about it? Right? Why isn't this story being told to investors? Because my career so far in the last 10 years has been more from an investment perspective as a private equity individual. Right? So I've been looking at various countries. I've invested almost across OIC member countries. My focus in emerging markets has been more as an investor. And these stories play a big role, right? I mean, there is a business in this country that is the largest exporter of textiles to IKEA. That's a huge success story, right? Because IKEA is very stringent in terms of the conditions that it applies on its supply chain. And it's a Pakistani business which is the largest exporter globally of textiles to IKEA. Right? That's not a small achievement. Why isn't that story out there? And it saddened me that I learned it through the Swedish ambassador. I didn't know it before. So these are stories that need to go out there, right? And these are stories that need to be told in the right way. So my function as a marketing team is to market you. That's what I'm trying to say. Because how many videos can I do on PBIT? I mean, max 2, 3, 4. I mean, I can do 4 speeches, and by that time I would have run out of content to say, and people would have run out of patience to listen to these speeches. But eventually, the job of my marketing department is to be able to market you, which is to tell your stories. You have to tell the stories of both your business and of Punjab. Right? That's how we get the investment going. In the investment world works a lot like a pack of wolves. As soon as one jumps, many people start to jump. Right? The issue is to get the first 2, 3 people going. So that's the role of the marketing function, for which what we would be doing is we would be knocking at your doors very soon with my marketing team, who want to interview you, record your videos, want PBIT to act as a platform for you to grow and for you to market yourself, your product, your business, and thereby automatically market Punjab. Right? So Punjab's marketing is not Jahanzeb speaking, it's not PBIT speaking, it's not any civil servant speaking. Punjab's marketing for investment purposes is its business community speaking about Punjab. So that's a perception fight that we collectively have to fight if we truly believe that we need to take Punjab forward. So that's a request that I make, and that's something for which my marketing function would come to you, bother you, and would want to engage with you continuously. So that's the first 2 parts of my strategy. The third part of my strategy is something that we have just started, which did not exist before at all, is the transactions department. I have my transactions team here as well. The transactions department, or I don't like to call it, I very specifically named it the transactions department because I wanted a very clear identity for that function. Right? And this is, this is my own personal professional bias given my own professional background. The background for setting up the transactions department very quickly was that each time investors come to us, we would traditionally show them a documentary, tell them about macro figures in Punjab, 100, 110 million people, 150 billion GDP, these many sectors, potential in this and that, and that's where generally our story as an investment board would stop. So we would paint for them a macro picture of how amazing Punjab is, and that's where we would stop. My issue was that when an investor comes to Pakistan, especially for the first time, hasn't interacted with Pakistan before, doesn't know Punjab before, they're coming here for the first time, just telling them a bunch of macro figures is not sufficient. Because when they look at the macro opportunity and they say, okay, where are the opportunities? We need to have an answer to the question of where are those sample opportunities, for which the idea is that we need to put together a pitch book, a very investment banking style pitch book, which actually says, look, these are the sample transactions that you can invest in. Right? These are investable businesses, which are an example of the bigger picture that we have talked about. So we need to have a pitch book. And my transaction team that I finally managed to put together is now their sole task, or their main task is to be able to put together that pitch book, right? Which is a pitch book of transactions, actual investable businesses, both for the local community and for the international investors. Right? Now, how do we develop that pitch book? And that's where your role becomes very, very pivotal, very, very critical. Right? How do we develop that pitch book? That pitch book is not going to be developed in an armchair in the office of PBIT. Right? It's not a theoretical or hypothetical pitch book. It's a realistic business opportunity that needs to be developed. That, therefore, needs to be developed in partnership with you. Right? The function that I want my transaction team to play is to act as a back office to a lot of the businesses here, where they come and meet you, and you are in sector X, right? And they say, okay, what are your investment plans over the next 2-3 years? And you say, look, I am doing this and I want to expand into this in the next 2 years, and this I want to put in X million dollars into that myself, and I want to raise the other Y million dollars from the market, this much equity and maybe this much debt. That's where my team's job is to be able to take that opportunity, sit down with you, discuss it, structure it into an investment thesis, an investment proposal, and that goes into our pitch book. So that when we go around roadshows, we're not just going around roadshows saying how wonderful Punjab is, we're saying how wonderful Punjab is, and these are the investment opportunities that there are. Because when you come to me and I'm an investor, and you tell me, look, this person has been doing this business for 10 years, they have experience in this. They're willing to put their own $1 million into this, and this is what they're willing to. This is what they want to raise from the market. If I have a good sponsor, if I have a good experienced person who knows how to run the business with his or her own skin in the game, there's no reason generally that investment will not come in, right? And if you're looking at FDI, yes, you need to have assured some kind of exchange rate stability, but there are hedging mechanisms that have come in play. But generally, with those two key ingredients in place, if you have a framework, if you have a good regulatory legal framework in the country, you have an experienced business person with good solid opportunities, that pitch book can become a realistic pitch book for bringing in investors. So therefore, I want to actually benefit from this forum, and officially introduce you to my transaction team and to this transaction function, because they will also be coming to you, knocking at your door, sitting down with you, discussing these business opportunities with you. Please help them put together these opportunities, because we are functioning as your back office, because this is our KPI. Right? This is what I think our KPI should be. This is what our objective should be. Eventually, I want to be able to, because I'm looking at, maybe not in the short term, but inshallah in the medium to long term, I want to be able to look at PBIT and report very quantifiably that PBIT was able to bring in or able to generate or able to facilitate X or Y or Z $1 million of investments, right? Year on year. So because that's the measurable, quantifiable metric that I want to be able to get. So that's the transaction function. Now, with that said, so those are the three key functions that I look at: facilitation, marketing, transactions, as the key part of the strategy for PBIT. Now, with that said, I referred to the ecosystem earlier on, which is both business community, which is financial institutions, which is policy making institutions, regulatory frameworks, PBIT, which are all part of the business or economic ecosystem of the province and of the country. In this, we're also, one of the steps that we've started to do is to actually reach out to financial institutions and start to develop a working relationship with them. Because it's also with regards to my vision in terms of developing a good transaction project pipeline, right? So we could be looking at sharing the pipeline with financial institutions, saying, look, these are the businesses that have come to us. They are looking for financing, please take them, because we're not in competition with the financial institution. We don't charge a fee. We're not out. We have a separate mandate. We're not crowding out the private sector. And similarly, the pipeline that the banks have, the transactions that come to banks, say for financing, we would be very happy to look at them and say, look, how can we get equity into them, right? And how can they go into our pitch book? So we want to play that role with the financial institutions, inshallah. So with that, I'm almost coming to now the end of what I wanted to say. So two things that I wanted to as takeaways from today's session, right? One is the joint working group, which was one of the key purposes of getting together. The joint working group, the idea of the joint working group is to act as a very dynamic, functional group that meets on a regular basis with the view to, we would sit down, develop its PORs, but broadly speaking, with the view to making sure that we are continuously fully informed about issues, challenges of the private sector, right? So whether those are policy issues, right? Let's sit down and say, okay, so leasing policy, other policies, how should those policies be developed? What kind of changes do we need in those policies? Absolutely, that's one of the key themes of that joint working group, where we can sit together, look at, jointly formulate policy recommendations and push them through all the appropriate channels to make sure they get adopted, implemented. So that's one of the key roles. The second role, of course, with regards to the strategy, the PBIT that I've outlined, the second role of the joint working group should also be to look at investment opportunities, to look at transactions, to look at where Punjab is going, as a province, where should we be bringing in investments, etc. So all of those, it should function as a very dynamic, realistic, practical group that works together, not in a us versus them kind of framework, but together to say, how do we make the business context for businesses better. So that's one key takeaway that we inshallah take out of this. The second piece is that, which is very important to me, which I want to highlight very much. And it's one of the last points I'm making, but it's a very, very important point. I want the investment industry in Punjab and Pakistan to grow. That investment industry is your venture capital private equity industry. Because without the growth of the investment industry itself, in the medium to long term, in my view, it's going to be hard to get the investment to GDP ratio up because you have to have institutional, sophisticated investment industry going in the country, in the province. There have been, there are already efforts being done in this regard. USAID has played a major role in this regard. It backed quite a few funds here in Pakistan that have been functioning, that have been investing. We want to take that a notch up, and we want to see how do we actually get the local business community involved in that process. Because, and I'll tell you the reason why I'm saying this. McKinsey did a study in Pakistan, and they were looking at how many businesses are valued or have a valuation of between $100 to $300 million. And they came up with a list of 150 businesses in Pakistan that have a valuation of about $100 to $300 million. Now, if you take a approximation on that, so say there are about 100 companies, and take an average of $200 million valuation. That's $20 billion worth of companies in Pakistan. To me, as an investment board, one simple strategy would be in terms of increasing the investment to GDP ratio, would be to say, okay, these businesses are right now, their total valuation is $20 billion. How do I get them to be a $30 billion valuation company over the next 5 years? Right? Because these are major businesses that are already working. They have customers, they have businesses, they're making profit, they have revenues, they have real sales, they're real businesses. How do we help them grow 2 times, 1.5 times? How do I get that multiple growth in them? So that collectively these businesses grow from a combined valuation of $20 billion to $30 billion. Because that's what your growth strategy is. As that happens, you automatically generate employment, you automatically bring growth. Now, the challenge that I sometimes, and I might be wrong in my impression because I haven't been here too long, but the challenge that I get in conversations with a lot of those business people is I sense that strong hesitation to come forward outside of what their typical sector is. Right? So if I'm doing sector X and I have excess liquidity sitting, there's a hesitation to experiment with a bit of that excess liquidity, to expand a portfolio, diversify, venture out, support SMEs, support young startups, see if I can get it growth. Right? Because it's a separate long conversation to have. This is not the right forum for it. But nonetheless, a lot of the times, I feel that there's a lot more that we can do together as the business community in terms of getting that investment industry moving forward. Because, for FDI comes in once the local businesses are investing. Right? That's when FDI has more confidence. So that was a more of a vague, high-level, abstract conversation. The practical, actionable item for me out of that is that, and we're announcing it today, we haven't announced it elsewhere before, that in Punjab Board of Investment and Trade, we are putting together a PBIT Investors Circle, right, which we're going to put together we're going to go visit other chambers, we're going to put together a Punjab Board of Investment and Trade Investors Circle. The Investors Circle, I wanted to function very much as an angel investor circle. These are people who have the willingness, right? They have the willingness to say, look, show us opportunities in SMEs, in startups. We will do our own due diligence on them. You should do your own due diligence on them because we can't guarantee due diligence from our side. So that's a disclaimer. You go do your own due diligence on it. But if you think it's a good opportunity, you're going to put your money into it. Because I want this as a support for our SMEs and our smaller startups. There are a lot of young entrepreneurs and smaller businesses that are out there that are looking for growth capital. Right? These are good businesses that are starving because they don't have capital. Right? This is a conversation that I'm having with a lot of young businesses. They don't have a collateral. The banks are not going to lend to them. They need equity investments. They need patient capital that has, and you all have your various appetites for how much ticket size you can tolerate, right? from $50,000, $50 lakh, $1 crore, whatever, like $50,000, $100,000, whatever your ticket size is, whatever your comfort level is. But I want this investor circle to be a circle that I as PBIT could happily share transactions with as they come up. So as these opportunities come to us, we circulate it in our investor circle, and that's where I get the confidence. A, that's one function of the investor circle. B, the second function of the investor circle is when people come to us from outside and they say they're looking for, this is what Rashid referred to, when they say they're looking for JV partners, they're looking for, I want, therefore, in investor circle, people who have the comfort, so that we, because in the investor circle, we would make profiles. So we would say, do you have a sectoral preference? What is your ticket size preference, right? Because those two need to be very important. If you're somebody who's not willing to look completely outside of your investor circle, your particular sector, that's fine. They will only show you transactions in that sector. Right? But those are the two key roles of the investor circle. I'll repeat them because they're important to me. A, to support the SME entrepreneurship sector. These are not grants. These are going to be your investments. This would be a pivot sponsored angel investor network. It happens everywhere in the world. Every country has angel investor networks. Each time that we sort of formalize it, take it a step forward, as in I want PBIT to play a role in that. And B, it is to be able to function as our circle that we can approach each time somebody comes and says they're looking for a JV partner. We want to be able to comfortably, without our own doubts, recommend this group of people by saying, look, go meet them, whoever you feel comfortable with, go ahead. But these are people that we have a comfort level with, because that's very important to me. I don't want to burn the confidence of any investor, especially coming from outside. So so therefore we want to be comfortable with whoever is in the investor circle. So that's it. I've made it gone much longer than I thought. Thank you so much, and inshallah I look forward to working together. Thank you.